Good morning on this beautiful Sunday morning, celebrating each and every one of us that works and gives our gifts in this wonderful universe, this wonderful place called Earth, on this Memorial Day weekend. Labor Day, oh, my bad. Well, we remember in Memorial that it's Labor Day weekend. No, I think that it's so important to acknowledge all the workers on Labor Day and, and to remember that it is a place of honor, to recognize that it takes all our hands to make this world work. And thank you for that correction. Right now, I also know we went into that beautiful moment of meditation, but I'd like about 30 seconds of introspection to go within and look at what intention that you want to walk away with today. Because for me, it seems to really be a laser focus on my thoughts and feelings and where I move them forward. So let us go in silence with an intention for just a few seconds. Thank you. And so we end this beautiful month of August with our theme of On the Wings of Love. And the very last Sunday today is the descent into love, coming in and grounding into this reality called life on earth that we are living. And I want to say that this week, with the horrific killing of children in the Catholic school church while they were praying, that there was a conversation. And after my quotes, I want to go back to that conversation. And the conversation in the media was, the mayor had said, I just don't want your thoughts and prayers. I want something done. And then the podcasters took that and ran from the left to the right and in the middle. And I was watching that with fascination, not a morbid fascination, but a fascination of belief systems, of the struggle we have being an infinite intelligence, being lived through a finite body. Because honestly, we have to eat, we have to breathe, we have to drink, we have to shelter, we need love, we need belonging, and those are very tangible. And without that, this vehicle of expression cannot exist. But when you think about the mystery of life, the energy of all life, and the science keeps creating and telling us that if we believe that there is a higher consciousness, that as Lori and Tanjali said, that you can call it anything you want. Universal spirit, God, intelligence. It is something that is within us, that the atoms are created, that the first law in physics and thermodynamics is energy can neither be created nor destroyed, just transformed. So with that knowledge, as we evolve in consciousness, our science and our spirituality constantly are saying yes to our relationship with spirit. And I find it fascinating that it's part of why I think we have not evolved and our evolution has not speeded up from where we know we could fly to the moon and we can't feed the people. That disparity is really in the fact that we are born into this life, and Ernest Holmes talks a lot about it. It's not just our individual consciousness that we are doing our work, but we are born into a human race consciousness that is a sandbox filled with beliefs, ideas, perceptions, misconceptions, and in this box, we unconsciously and subconsciously have said yes. And don't play out of the sandbox. And don't think about maybe, just maybe, there's more to life than what we believe. And what's interesting in psychology, they're saying that one of the problems of expanding our consciousness is that once we have a belief system, if I say something that is congruent, even if it's new, but it fits into your sandbox, you're like, yes. And if it doesn't, it's heck no, you know? But that keeps us limited. That keeps us limited. Our beliefs keep us limited. From the way we were taught, raised, the idea of gender, the idea of every problem that Gitanjali was singing about in Bette Midler's song. Because it's not that we are living in a place of right and wrong in our beliefs. It's just we haven't expanded. As Einstein said, you cannot solve the problem with the same mind that created it. It's what they're saying is you have to be willing to be uncomfortable. And I know last week I was uncomfortable, and I think I made other people maybe a little uncomfortable, but it's because that's how we grow. That's how we grow. And are we willing to just maybe keep working on the things that we just for sure know is true and nobody's going to change our minds, to like peek out? Because this quote says a lot about it. It says, the journey into having a beautiful life is not in seeking new landscapes, but in having new eyes. What does that mean? That means that there's more. That means that this infinite intelligence within us, that is us, that jugular vein is God, universal spirit, intelligence, is in a still small voice that we have to work at listening to, because the material is so loud and so seductive that we forget that once we have tried to grasp everything possible that we think will make us happy, and eventually it self-destructs. Maybe not the thing itself, but the feelings behind it. You fall in love, and it's the best thing since sliced bread. You hit a wall, and you're like, oh, man, this wasn't it. I didn't sign up for that. I don't care what it is. Having children, having your perfect job, because it's ever expanding into something greater. And just because it doesn't fit our image. And I want to talk about image, because I was watching some of the things in politics, and I was laughing how susceptible I am to image. How totally susceptible I am to image. And that is part of our subconscious, race-conscious thought that impacts us. Ernest Holmes talks a lot about manifestation, right? And in our prayer, our spiritual mind treatment, science of mind, spirituality and science walk hand in hand. We, as practitioners, as ministers, we are taught that when I do, or any of us, do a spiritual mind treatment, we actually aren't treating for you. We are treating our own consciousness, because that is the place that is the only place we have power. We have no control over anything else in life. We can have power over people to try to control them, but we really can't control their ideas, their thoughts, their hearts, their minds. It's only our own hearts and minds and thoughts we can control. And that is where the work is done, whether it be Buddhism, Sufism, Christianity, Islam. It's all about here, because that's the relationship to God, is in here. And I'm going to read some things from Ernest Holmes right now, because as I treat for your conditions, I can only treat my consciousness, and once I can embody that, I can stand as a beacon of light so you can see and feel that it's possible. But I can't go in and change your conditions and your mind. I have to change mine. And that is why, Elijah and I and all the ministers are constantly saying, it is up to us to do the inner work. And there are principles, but there are practices, again, whether it's Buddhism or Christianity, that speaks to us loudly. And going back to the prayer issue, this is where it all comes in. This news podcast, people were saying, thoughts and prayers, we need action. And then the spiritual folk, or the religious folk actually, were saying, no, prayers and thoughts are everything. And what we know in this room is it's not either or, but both and. It is both and, because we are material and we are spiritual. And we have to learn the power behind the spiritual. That's why we're here, for a community of belonging, that there is power in our word, that there is power. If it was easy, I would have had the winning lotto ticket a long, long time ago, and I would be looking like something else. I don't know. But but the point is that it's not that simple. We have to work. We have to be willing to be uncomfortable. We have to be willing to change our minds. So Ernest Holmes talks a little bit about that here, and then I have a story. The descent into love. We must penetrate more deeply into our own nature. Deconstruct the internalization of our subconscious beliefs that we hold. The whole aim of Science of Mind is to realize and consciously penetrate the upper atmosphere of our thought and bring it down, as it were, into the lower mind, to know a different version of reality. He goes on to say in Can We Talk to God? We must not go searching after God. God is in you and in me. Therefore, we must penetrate more deeply into our own nature. And just so surely as we do, we will have a very marvelous experience. We will find a depth to ourselves that we have never realized. It will be a sane, spiritual experience. We will sense something within that we have never dreamed of. We have read about it, but never felt it. And yet, it is within us all the time, that still small voice. This is where we meet God, and where we're going to learn this, that we can talk to God just as consciously as we talk to people. And that if we expect it, believe it, and feel it, we will receive just as a direct response. We will not receive an audible word, because God's audible word is placed in his creation, in the mouths of individuals. And this is the only audible word God has on this plane. God speaks every time a scientist discovers a new thing, every time an inventor invents a new thing, God speaks. And wherever truth is proclaimed. Wow. I want to talk about my personal prejudice. My father, many, many moons ago, told me, Tamara, everybody's prejudiced. And I was like, oh, I'm a product of the 70s. What are you talking about? You know, I'm not prejudiced. He says, well, the Latin word of prejudice means to prejudge. And I was like, oh, okay. Darn. So as I went growing up in religious science, where prosperity is your divine right and everything is centered on I, me, and that is the time it was necessary. But all of us always talk about wanting to be enlightened and a spiritual avatar. The problem with that is once you meet nirvana or whatever, heaven, in this plane, on this earth spiritually, the journey is not over. Buddha, everyone comes back to help the rest of us get there. Because we all are one. And that's where every spiritual faith talks about service, about helping the most vulnerable, about social justice. It is not about politics. It is about justice. It's about humanity. It's about treating others kindly, compassionately, love, which is the truth of who we are. Right? I remember when I was 22 years old, I was a senior at San Diego State, and my major was social work. My teacher, Dr. K, was a bald-headed guy, which back then bald was not in, okay? It was not hot. The only bald guy, and most of y'all young won't get it, was Telly Savalas on Kojak. And he would put a lollipop in his mouth instead of smoke. And Dr. K smoked and did lollipops. And every time I get bored, I think, he looks like Telly Savalas on Kojak. Anyway, he told us one day when we were going into our internships, he said this, and this was a huge, concrete lesson for me in judgment. He said, so you all are bright-eyed and bushy-tailed future social workers out there to save the world. And he said, I want you to look at where the door is right now. We're like, you know, why? He said, in your positions, in your internships, you are going to be challenged. Because the people that you are committing to serve may cause you some problems. He said, if you have issues with child molestation, murder, incest, violence, abusers, and you cannot transcend from their actions to the people, that their actions are horrific, but they're still human beings left here on earth with work to do, then you cannot be an advocate. And there is the door. So quickly, he told us this. He said, the first part, my internship, was at juvenile hall with the juveniles who had been done with their time and back home in their families. And the first young man said to me, the first social worker, Betty Riles, she was the probation officer, she told me this. She said, we're going to go into the home. It's a little tough, but, I'll explain all later. But the teacher said, Dr. K said, you can only read the police report before you meet the client. So as I read the police report, I was horrified. He had done horrible acts on young children. He was 16. But when I met him, I had this vision of this horrific human child. When I saw him, the police report didn't say he was developmentally disabled. They didn't say that he looked 10 years old. He looked like Howdy Doody, and that he had a horrific background of physical and sexual abuse himself. It put it into a different perspective. My judgment shifted. And there were several, I had 10 cases. The next semester, he said, I do not want you to read the cases. And you're going to go, Tamara, you're going to go into juvenile hall and you're going to work with the girls that are already incarcerated. So I was like, okay. So I go in. I fell in love with this beautiful, beautiful Native American girl who was 8 months pregnant. But nobody would talk to her. Nobody would sit with her. No, they just pretended she didn't exist. And I was like, I wonder why. So I got to know her, and we played cards. We did all kinds of fun things. I just fell in love with her. And she would cry on my shoulder because no one would talk to her. But she didn't tell me why. At the end of the semester, I found out why. She lived on the reservation. There was a very physical, violent altercation, and she snapped, and she murdered someone very violently. And nobody wanted to get near her. She had a reputation. And honestly, if I had heard all the graphic details from the police report, I don't think I would have given her all those hugs and played cards. I would have done it very slowly. But here's my challenge for you. Out of that experience, I was sitting in my car thinking, every time I see someone that's different, our minds are geared. That unfamiliarity is fear, is red lights for our survival. When I see somebody homeless, sometimes I think, what happened in their lives that they're there? So I prejudge it. And I challenge you today to get out of your sandbox and experiment with looking at people and seeing what the first race-conscious thought that may come up for you, and try to turn that around and change it. People are not less than and more than, and that's what's happening in this country, and that's why I will continue to talk about it, because that's what spirituality means, to take action when we see humanity being harmed by people who have forgotten who they are. And I could go on, but I must stop. So I want to thank you for joining me in this experiment of looking and being and playing and fighting outside of the sandbox for a different perspective so we may evolve into better human beings, so that we may evolve to what we know that still small voice keeps nagging at us, that it is compassion, that we are all one, and that we all make a difference. Thank you. I'm learning how to keep time. And so as we go into prayer, let us know one thing, that God speaks in a language without a tongue, a spiritual language that tugs at something so deep within us. It comes as a whisper. As Ernest Holmes says, not in the audible way, but in the way when we go deep into the silence, something tells us yes to kindness, yes to love, yes to possibility. We have gone to the moon. We know that this is just one universe in an infinite universe. That is what we have found in this finite body and our finite level of understanding. But the truth is, it's an infinite understanding, and it is an infinite universe. May you go forward knowing that all things are possible, all feelings are possible, and that we not only have choice, but we have power, not only in our word, but in our actions. And just like that school prayer that they were fighting, it's both and. It's always both and. We create from the invisible to the visible, but we have hands and feet that take actions. Faith without works is dead. We must go down that road. We must understand it's both and. And as we stand for humanity in its highest and most glorious place that every spiritual doctrine talks about, may you remember that you are representing the most powerful infinite consciousness. that exist as real as your fingers on your hand. And in knowing this, I give great, great gratitude for the beauty of being alive and sharing my life and my heart with all these wonderful, gifted humans that sit in front of me. Thank you. I am so grateful. And so it is.